Good evening, part 2 of 2, the turbo reinstallation on the E36 N54. My name is Frank Macaluso from Garageaholic, and I'm here to provide you all the information that you need for the N54 twin turbo swap. Today, like I said, we are going to be reinstalling the turbos, all the cooling lines, all the oil lines. We're going to be replacing all the O-rings and gaskets for the exhaust system and the coolant and oil lines. So we are just about done with the reinstallation of this stuff, so we'll show you how we did it. And then we'll move on to some more exciting stuff. All right, guys, stay tuned. All right, so what did we get here from our ECS kit? We got our 2 exhaust output flanges. That's this guy that goes in there. We got 6 exhaust manifold flanges. 3 go in there and 3 go in the other one. We've got our 12 exhaust studs with our nuts. We have 2 gaskets here that go on the oil drain. That's one of them right there. All right, that's why there's no O-ring attachment there. It's just the gasket. And there's one on the other side. There's one cooling pump seal O-ring. That goes right there where the old one was, right into the engine block. And we've got 2 air intake seals for the charge air. We have 2 larger O-rings for, again, the other side of these guys. There's a slightly larger opening than the rest of the cooling lines and the oil lines. And these 12 are going to the oil and cooling lines for both turbos. So this is the entire kit. It's about $250 from ECS, and it's actually a pretty good buy. Good quality stuff so far, at least from what I've seen. And I'm looking forward to installing all this and getting these turbos back on today. All right, so I wanted to take a couple minutes and clean this, clean the block and the head just a little bit, just enough to make all the connections nice and secure. So I did do all of the exhaust gaskets, kind of just cleaned the surface, the mating surface there. I cleaned all of the coolant return lines. Right, there's a coolant return line there, right there, and then these are the coolant send lines, and that's where the gasket or the O-ring ends up making its mate. So that needs to be cleaned up, make sure that there's no corrosion on that. The 2 oil return lines are right there, and that also does need to be cleaned. So, I just kind of took a rag and just wiped out any grease or contaminants in there. But I'm not really going to go to the detail of like the block and sandblast or powder blast or whatever, because I just don't think it's necessary for the purposes of what this car will be used for. This is going to be kind of like a rat rod race car, so I wanted to make sure that it's just functional, and that's really the important thing. So these O-rings are going to make a nice clean seal on all of these interfaces. The exhaust gaskets will make a nice clean interface, and everything will work. And that's the important thing, is we just want everything to work. So yeah, it doesn't look very pretty. The block does have a little bit of corrosion on the engine there, on the block, but honestly, for the purpose of what we need it for, this is all we need. So everything is lining up pretty well. What do you say we enter a little bit of a time lapse and do some exhaust work, huh? Let's get those studs on. All right, now we're going to take a wire brush. We're going to try cleaning out some of the coolant inlet and outlets of both turbos because it was kind of rusty. So we're just going to clean that out with a wire brush real quick, and then we're going to take the O-rings off of each of the lines for the coolant and the oil lines, and we're going to replace them with the new O-rings. So we'll do a quick time lapse on that. All right, so if you're still watching this, congratulations, you made it. But I really wanted to illustrate that, hey, it does take a lot of time to clean all these, remove the O-rings. Those O-rings were really bad. if you really want a good quality job, you need to take your time with it. You really need to remove the O-rings. You need to clean everything. As you can see, I was using a brass brush in order to remove all the corrosion off of some of those coolant lines. So yeah, I mean, you do need to take your time when you clean these up before you put the new O-rings on, because the last thing that you want is a leak when you start the engine back up. That is going to be the worst thing, because removing them and replacing them is going to be a bear, and you don't want to deal with that. So now we'll put the O-rings back on, and we'll try to see if we can fit all this thing to get back this. And we'll see if we can fit this thing back together the way that it was intended to be installed, because it's a little intimidating having all these hoses in different shapes and sizes and figuring out where they all need to go. I could have marked them with a marker, but I didn't. I figured that I would be smart enough to figure out where they go, and you can too. All right, here we go. All right, I think I figured out where they all go. I'm using a 3-in-1 multi-purpose oil. You put a little bit of oil on the O-rings, and it helps the assembly to slip right in. You still do need to use some force, but it helps to prevent the O-ring from binding, cracking, breaking, or ripping as you're installing them. So this is a really good practice to use just a tiny bit of oil to lubricate the surface before you put everything back on. So let's do a quick time lapse and see if we can try getting the lines installed on the turbos, and then we can start fitting the turbos onto the engine block. Okay, for illustrative purposes, let's stop the time lapse, and let's show you how to do an installation of one of these things, because they got to snap in. It's not really that hard to do. Once you get the oil in, you kind of put a little bit of pressure in there. They should give you that really satisfying clicking / snapping feel. So let me show you how to do that. So I figured out where these two go here. All right, these are the coolant lines, and I got a little bit of the oil. These two puppies overlap, so we'll have to install them in order. You just basically, where are we here? Just a tiny bit of oil. Roll it around. And then put it on just like this. And then you push. Sometimes you might need to wiggle. I found that using the back of this hammer is good. Just to push, right? Not to do anything destructive, but just to push. Feel that? That puppy snapped right in, and now it rotates freely while it's inside of its casing. So this is actually a really good install. This guy's going to end up going right on top of it and overlap, so let's do that too. A little oil. Rub it around the entire circumference. And you might need to lift up the turbo in order to do this, because the line... Oh, there we go. Okay. That one did not have the satisfying click that the other one had, but this one also, this does seat really well. And now we want to put in a short bolt, just like that. So there's two different size bolts here. Let me just emphasize that real quick. I separated these guys out. There's a longer one, and then there's a shorter one. The shorter one, I'm assuming it's because the steel casting doesn't have the depth necessary in order to, to get the thread engagement that it requires. So the smaller, shorter bolt is what's required for those. And I believe it's for this because I tried a longer one on this, and it was just it was bottoming out before it was tightening it all the way. So that was my clue. I probably should have taken note of which screw was where, but there were only two different sizes, so I figured I can figure it out myself. All right, so I got my oil drain, I've got my coolant supply, coolant return installed on both turbos, and I waited for the end for this guy. This guy's going to end up getting installed right now on the block before anything else goes in. So this guy basically is your oil supply line. Oil comes out from the engine block into the line. It disperses to each of the turbos from the top, and it kind of drains down the turbo and goes out this into the oil pan. That's basically how the oil system works. And the same for the cooling. The cooling kind of just comes in and out. It doesn't go through like the oil goes through to lubricate the shaft of the turbo. But the coolant lines just basically kind of just go through, loop right around. So now I believe that we are ready to install the turbos. We'll install both of these puppies, but we'll install this guy first. So let's do that. All right, so now we're going to install the oil feed line. We're going to install the exhaust heat shields over the lines. And then we are basically ready to get the exhaust gaskets on the turbo manifold and get these turbos installed and start clipping in all the cooling lines. So let's do it. Alright guys, let's do a quick recap here. I installed the first turbo. I'm doing reverse, installation is reverse of the removal. So this is the first thing to come back on. The oil feed line is installed. The oil supply line is installed. As you can see, I had to backtrack by removing these two just to get access to that screw right there. Yeah, that was really tough to get to. It's actually almost impossible. So I had to remove these. Really easy to do once everything's pretty much cleaned up. Not that hard to remove. That guy's installed over there. All these guys are installed. I do need to torque these down. I believe it's somewhere in 12 to 15 foot-pounds range. I've got my coolant line here set and ready to go. So now I can install my coolant hose with the new gasket. So I got to put the gasket in there, put the tube in there, and then I can start installing that. And then the other turbo will then go on. So I will do another time lapse of all that. And then after all those lines are installed, then we are pretty much complete. We do need to put all the other fixings back on here, but I'm going to end up cleaning a lot of the head and everything else that's coming in. But the airlines and all that stuff will end up coming through. You guys are probably wondering why I did not do the jack stand. I have a jack stand back there. And that's because I already installed the clutch. It was really difficult to align it with the tool that I had, so I don't have an actual clutch alignment tool. So I had to use what I had, and I did not want to remove it. So because the clutch and pressure plate were on, I didn't have the clearance in order to clear this and hit the block. So that's why this has kind of always been dangling from the this, because it's just the lesser of two evils to just work on a hanging engine than one that is on a jack stand due to the clutch. So that's why I have it that way. Anyway, on to it. We're done. Both turbos installed, all coolant and oil lines tightened and installed. That guy in there was a bit of a bugger for a while. It just wouldn't fit. I needed to pry it in and also get the screw in at the same time, so that was a little bit tricky. Both turbos are in, drain lines installed on both sides, supply lines installed, all coolant lines on. The main coolant line to the pump is installed. I need to still install the pump. That'll be for another video, along with the all the belts that we'll end up cleaning all the front up and install the belts and the pulleys. So everything is pretty much done here. If you guys have any questions, please contact me in the many ways that you know how, and I'll see what I can do to help you. So I do need to go back and retorque the exhaust manifold copper nuts with either a T50 or an 11 millimeter. They're very versatile. You can do either. And that's about it. So we're moving along here, and these turbos are done. All right, guys, we are done with turbo reinstallation. We can move on to other aspects of the engine. We're going to be doing the oil pan. We're going to be doing the pulleys and the tensioners and the belt. And that's just about it. And then we're going to clean everything up, of course, and make sure that everything is kosher with the engine and its performance. So we are done today. Thanks a lot, guys, for watching. If you have any comments or questions, please leave a comment. Love the comments, and like, subscribe, tell your friends. I'm going to start going on the forums a little bit more and going on the Facebook groups to get a little bit more information out there for you guys on how I did this swap, because it's becoming increasingly popular now. The N54 twin turbo is a very versatile engine, so I am very much looking forward to sharing my experiences with you as we get into more other aspects of the swap. So thanks a lot for watching, and have a great day, and we will talk again soon. Later.